I'm Hazel, and I'm 32 years old. My father used emotional and physical violence to control every aspect of my life for the majority of it. Even when he smashed my face into my dinner plate in front of business associates, no one ever stepped in to stop him. In fact, my mother grinned and remarked, "At least you are worth looking at now." "She's worthless. Just a prop at my table," my father said. What they never expected was how those dinner guests reacted. Their faces went pale when they witnessed what my family really was. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If you have ever felt invisible in your own home, please subscribe. My journey might help you find your own way out. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, Harold, was a successful businessman who had built his company from the ground up. Our house in the suburbs of Boston was the envy of the neighborhood with its manicured lawn and tasteful decor. My mother, Diane, was known for hosting the most elegant dinner parties and charity events. And then there was me, their only daughter, always dressed in expensive clothes, always smiling in family photos. No one saw what happened when the doors closed. My earliest memories are of trying desperately to earn my parents' approval. When I was 6, I brought home an art project from school. My teacher had praised it, even displaying it on the classroom wall. I remember practically bouncing with excitement to show my parents. My father glanced at it for barely a second before saying, "Is this really the best you could do? The perspective is all wrong." I didn't even know what perspective meant at that age. My mother was no better. She was obsessed with appearances. "Stand up straight, Hazel. Smile more naturally, Hazel. That outfit makes you look chubby, Hazel." Nothing I did was ever enough. I learned that their love was conditional, based on achievements and performances that constantly fell short. When my brother Thomas was born when I was 8, I thought things might change. Maybe with 2 children, the pressure would ease. Instead, it only highlighted the difference in how we were treated. Thomas could do no wrong in their eyes. His mediocre report cards were celebrated, while my straight A's were expected. His tantrums were just boys being boys, while my tears were emotional manipulation. Our extended family must have suspected something was wrong. My grandmother once asked me if everything was okay at home after noticing how I flinched when my father raised his voice. But when I started to tell her, my mother interrupted, steering the conversation elsewhere. My Aunt Patricia occasionally gave me concerned looks, especially when my father criticized me in front of others, but she never said anything. Nobody ever did. The warning signs of my father's rage were always there. When business deals went wrong, he would punch walls or throw objects. My mother taught me from a young age how to manage his moods. "Just stay quiet when he comes home looking like that," she would whisper. "Do not give him any reason to notice you." I became an expert at making myself invisible, speaking only when spoken to, anticipating his needs before he expressed them. School became my only refuge. I threw myself into academics and extracurriculars, partly to earn their approval, but also to stay away from home as much as possible. I joined every club that would have me: debate team, student council, orchestra, volleyball, anything to delay going back to that house. By middle school, I had internalized the belief that there must be something fundamentally wrong with me. Why else would my own parents treat me this way? I scrutinized myself endlessly, looking for the flaws they seemed to see so clearly. Too loud, too quiet, too emotional, too cold. I could never get it right. My father controlled our lives with an iron grip disguised as high standards. He monitored my grades online daily, questioning any score below 95%. He vetted my friends, refusing to let me spend time with anyone he deemed not ambitious enough. When I was 12, I was invited to my first slumber party. He called the parents to interrogate them about supervision and sleeping arrangements before ultimately deciding it was inappropriate. I cried myself to sleep that night while the party went on without me. My mother was more subtle in her control, but no less damaging. She weaponized guilt and shame. "After all we do for you" became her favorite phrase. When I expressed any unhappiness, she would remind me of children who had real problems and how ungrateful I was for the privileged life they provided. Material possessions were meant to compensate for the emotional void. Our house was filled with expensive things, but devoid of warmth. The furniture was for show, not comfort. Family meals were performances where we practiced proper etiquette rather than shared our days. My father would use dinner to interrogate me about my accomplishments or failings. "What did you achieve today to justify your existence?" he would sometimes ask. I was not a child to them. I was an investment they expected returns from. As I entered my teen years, I became increasingly aware that our family dynamic was not normal. I saw how my friends' parents spoke to them with respect and affection. I noticed how other fathers hugged their daughters instead of criticizing their posture. I observed mothers who protected their children rather than sacrificed them to appease an angry spouse. But this awareness only made me feel more isolated, more convinced that I was the problem. If I could just be better, maybe they would love me the way other parents love their children. My teenage years brought a new dimension to my father's criticism. It became more personal, more vicious. As my body changed, it became another target for their disapproval. My mother monitored every calorie I consumed, commenting on my problem areas, as she called them. My father made remarks about my appearance that no father should ever make about his daughter. "No man will want you if you keep eating like that," he would say at dinner. Or, "You should be grateful we can afford braces. Your natural smile would scare people away." The college application process became a new battleground. I wanted to study psychology, fascinated by human behavior and perhaps unconsciously seeking answers about my own family. My father laughed when I told him. "Psychology is for people who cannot cut it in real fields," he declared. "You will study business and join my company." End of discussion. My mother, as always, supported his decision. "Your father knows what is best for your future, Hazel. Why must you always fight him?" I applied to psychology programs in secret, even earning a scholarship to a prestigious university across the country. When the acceptance letter arrived, my father intercepted it. The resulting confrontation was one of the worst of my young life. He tore the letter to pieces in front of me, calling me ungrateful and deceitful. Then he made calls to his business contacts on the university's board, ensuring my scholarship was revoked. I ended up at his alma mater studying business management as he demanded. During my freshman year of college, I met Jake. He was kind and attentive, the first person who seemed to value my thoughts and feelings. We had been dating for 3 months when I finally agreed to bring him home for dinner. Within minutes, my father began subtly undermining me, telling embarrassing stories and contradicting everything I said. Jake noticed, giving my hand reassuring squeezes under the table. Later that night, he gently suggested that my father's behavior seemed controlling. It was the first time anyone had named what was happening. 2 weeks later, Jake and I broke up. My father had called his family, expressing concerns about Jake's academic record and future prospects. He implied that Jake was using me for my family's connections. Jake's parents pressured him to end the relationship. I was devastated, but not surprised. Anyone who tried to get close to me eventually became collateral damage in my father's campaign to maintain control. Depression and anxiety became my constant companions, though I never had the words to describe what I was experiencing. When I mentioned feeling sad all the time to my mother, she told me to toughen up and that I was too sensitive. Physical symptoms began to manifest: stomach aches, insomnia, panic attacks. A campus doctor suggested counseling, but my father refused to pay for it, calling it indulgent nonsense. After graduation, as planned, I began working at my father's company. This opened a whole new avenue for control. He criticized my work publicly, held me to impossible standards, and took credit for my successes. Colleagues avoided associating too closely with me, knowing I was in the boss's doghouse. All except Sophia, the marketing director, who saw through the dynamic immediately. Sophia was in her 40s, confident and accomplished. She began mentoring me discreetly, offering guidance and support that I had never experienced before. "What your father is doing is not normal or acceptable in any workplace," she told me after witnessing a particularly harsh dressing down. "And I suspect it's not new behavior." That simple validation was revolutionary. Someone else could see what was happening. I was not crazy or oversensitive. Meanwhile, my mother's role evolved from passive enabler to active participant. She no longer just excused my father's behavior, she joined in. When I showed up at Sunday dinner wearing a new dress I had purchased with my own money, she looked me up and down before saying, "That color makes you look sallow. I don't know why you insist on making choices that highlight your flaws." The dinner parties continued, more elaborate than ever now that I was working in the family business. These events were performances where we pretended to be the perfect family. My father would brag about mentoring me in the business while simultaneously undermining my confidence. "Hazel is still learning," he would tell guests after I spoke, patting my hand condescendingly. "She has a long way to go before she understands how things really work." My resentment grew, but so did my desperate hope for their approval. Even as an adult, I could not shake the belief that if I just tried harder, achieved more, became perfect, somehow they would finally love me the way I had always needed to be loved. It was a cycle I could not break free from. The physical intimidation that had always simmered beneath the surface became more overt. My father would grab my arm during conversations to emphasize points, leaving fingerprint bruises. He would stand too close during arguments, using his height to tower over me. Once, when I disagreed with him about a client presentation, he slammed his hand on the desk so hard that my coffee mug jumped and spilled. "This is why women don't belong in business," he hissed. Too emotional to handle real pressure. Through it all, I continued to seek their approval. I still believed somehow that I could earn their love if I just found the right combination of achievements and behaviors. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces kept changing shape. Every time I thought I had figured it out, the rules would shift again. The dinner that changed everything happened on a Thursday in April. My father had invited the Wilsons and the Garcias, representatives from two companies he was courting for a major partnership. These deals would potentially double our company's revenue. Everything must be perfect, my mother stressed as she supervised the catering staff. "Hazel, wear the blue dress I bought you. It minimizes your flaws." I spent hours preparing, knowing how important this night was to my father. I reviewed company profiles and industry news so I could participate intelligently in the conversation if asked. I had my hair professionally styled and applied my makeup with painstaking precision. The blue dress, as my mother had noted, did hide what she considered my figure flaws. Looking in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked polished, professional, perfect. Maybe tonight would finally be the night I made them proud. The evening began smoothly enough. My father was in his element, charming and authoritative as he welcomed our guests. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were an older couple, established in the industry for decades. The Garcias were younger, representing an innovative tech company that could bring fresh approaches to our traditional business model. My mother played her role flawlessly, the elegant hostess, making everyone feel welcome while subtly highlighting our family's status and success. I was on my best behavior, speaking only when directly addressed, laughing at all the right moments, complimenting my mother's impeccable taste. The first course was served, and conversation flowed around business trends and market projections. My father dominated the discussion as always, positioning himself as the visionary leader who saw opportunities others missed. Then Mr. Garcia asked about our company's social media strategy, an area I had been researching extensively. Before my father could respond, I spoke up, sharing some insights about emerging platforms and demographic shifts. The table fell momentarily silent. I had not been invited to contribute. To my surprise, Mr. Garcia seemed impressed. "That's a remarkably insightful analysis," he said, nodding appreciatively. "You obviously have a solid grasp of where digital marketing is headed," Mrs. Wilson agreed, adding that her company had been struggling to connect with younger consumers. For a brief, shining moment, I felt validated and valuable. Then I made the mistake of glancing at my father. His face was a rigid mask, but I knew that look. Beneath his polite smile, rage was building. I had stolen his spotlight, contradicted his outdated views on digital marketing, and, worst of all, impressed his potential clients on my own merit. My stomach knotted with dread. I knew there would be consequences, though I never imagined how severe they would be. The main course arrived, a perfectly prepared salmon with seasonal vegetables. My father smoothly reclaimed control of the conversation, steering it toward traditional marketing approaches. When I caught Sophia's eye across the table, she gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. She had been invited as the marketing director and knew how significant my contribution had been. About halfway through the main course, the conversation turned to family businesses and succession planning. Mr. Wilson mentioned how his daughter had successfully taken over their European operations. "There's nothing like having family you can trust in key positions," he remarked. "Is that the plan here? Eventually, will Hazel be taking over someday?" My father's hand tightened around his wine glass. "Hazel still has much to learn about leadership," he said dismissively. "Running a company requires a certain natural authority that not everyone possesses." The implication was clear: not me, never me. I should have stayed quiet. I knew better than to challenge him publicly. But something in me snapped. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "our digital division has grown 30% under my direction this year. Our client retention metrics are the highest they've been in company history." The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Garcia smiled approvingly at me, clearly impressed. Mr. Wilson looked intrigued. My father's face darkened, and my mother's smile became brittle. I knew immediately I had crossed a line from which there was no return. What happened next occurred so quickly that at first, no one reacted. My father's hand shot out, grabbing the back of my head. In one violent motion, he slammed my face down into my plate. My nose and mouth hit the ceramic with a sickening crack. I felt the warm salmon and sauce smear across my face, into my carefully styled hair, down the front of the blue dress. As he released my head and I straightened up, stunned and humiliated, sauce dripped from my chin. My mother actually laughed, not a full laugh, but a smirk and a chuckle. "Well," she said, "at least now you are worth looking at. The food brings some color to your face." My father, seemingly unaware or uncaring of the horrified expressions around the table, added coldly, "She has no value, just a prop at my table, and not even a decorative one at that." Their faces went pale. Mrs. Wilson gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Garcia half rose from his seat, looking uncertainly between me and my father. Sophia's fork clattered onto her plate. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The mask had slipped, and our perfect family facade had shattered in front of the very people my father most wanted to impress. Blood from my nose mingled with the salmon sauce. I could taste it, metallic and salty. Tears welled in my eyes, but I fought them back. Crying would only make things worse. "Excuse me," I finally managed to whisper, standing on shaky legs. "I should clean up." "Yes, you should," my mother said, her voice unnaturally bright as she tried to salvage the situation. "Such a clumsy girl, always has been. Please continue enjoying your meal, everyone. Hazel will be fine." As I walked away, I heard my father smoothly pivoting, telling the guests that I had been having emotional difficulties lately. "We've been very concerned about her stability," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "You know how it is with young people these days. So much pressure. We've been considering getting her professional help." The last thing I heard before I closed the bathroom door was Mrs. Garcia's cool reply, "Perhaps it's not Hazel who needs professional help." In that moment, a perfect stranger showed more concern for my well-being than my parents ever had. In the guest bathroom, I locked the door and finally let the tears come. Blood and food dripped from my face into the pristine white sink. My nose was not broken, but it throbbed painfully. The beautiful blue dress was ruined. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself, not because of the food and makeup smeared across my face, but because of the empty, haunted look in my eyes. How long had I looked like that? As I mechanically cleaned my face and tried to salvage my appearance, memories of previous incidents flashed through my mind. My father yanking me up by the arm when I tripped at a company picnic when I was 10, hissing that I was embarrassing him. My mother telling dinner guests that I was going through an awkward phase when I was 13, suggesting they not look too closely at me. Countless public humiliations, each one normalized until I accepted them as what I deserved. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sophia. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" It was the first time anyone had ever offered help after one of these incidents. I didn't know how to respond. Was I okay? Had I ever been? Before I could reply, there was a sharp knock on the bathroom door. "Hazel, you've been in there long enough. My mother's voice came through, irritated rather than concerned. People are finishing their main course. This behavior is unacceptable. I opened the door to find her standing there, arms crossed. There was no sympathy in her expression, only annoyance that I had disrupted her perfect dinner party. "You provoked him," she said quietly. "You know better than to contradict your father in front of clients. What were you thinking?" "He pushed my face into my plate," I whispered, still not quite believing it had happened in front of everyone. "Don't be so dramatic. It was barely a tap. And you should be thanking him. The Wilsons and Garcias will remember you now at least." She handed me a compact. "Fix your makeup and come back for dessert. And for goodness sake, smile. Your sulking is unattractive." I did as I was told, robotic in my compliance. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I smiled. I nodded. I apologized for my clumsiness when Mrs. Wilson asked if I was all right. The Garcias left early, citing an early morning meeting. The Wilsons stayed for coffee but declined dessert. No one mentioned the incident again, but it hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The drive home was silent. My father acted as if nothing unusual had happened, commenting only on the quality of the wine and Mr. Wilson's golf handicap. My mother discussed redecorating the dining room. It was surreal, this ability they had to rewrite reality instantly. In their version of events, my father had not assaulted me at the dinner table. I had simply had an embarrassing accident, perhaps even intentionally caused by me to sabotage his business dealings. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying the moment over and over, not just my father's violence or my mother's cruelty, but the reactions of the others at the table. They had seen. They had been shocked. Their faces confirmed what part of me had always known but never fully accepted. This was not normal. This was not okay. This was abuse. The next morning, I went to work as usual, though every muscle in my body screamed at me to run away and never look back. The office was unusually quiet when I arrived. People glanced at me and quickly looked away. Sophia had called in sick. The rumors had already started spreading. My father summoned me to his office before noon. "Close the door," he instructed when I entered. His voice was calm, which was always more frightening than his shouting. "We need to be very clear about something, Hazel. What happens in our family is private. Do you understand?" "Yes," I replied automatically. "The Wilsons called this morning. They've decided to go with another firm." His eyes bored into mine, placing the blame squarely on my shoulders. "Your little performance last night cost this company millions. I hope you're satisfied." I said nothing, which seemed to infuriate him more than any response would have. "If anyone asks about last night, you had a migraine. You became dizzy and fell forward. That's all. Family matters stay private. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," I replied, my voice hollow. Later that day, my mother called, insisting I come for lunch on Sunday. "We need to present a united front," she said. "People talk, and we need to show there are no issues between us. No apology, no acknowledgement, just concern for appearances as always." When I returned to my desk, there was an email from Sophia asking to meet after work at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Part of me wanted to decline, to retreat into the familiar isolation that had been my protection for so long. But a new, fragile voice inside urged me to go. Sophia was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth away from windows. She looked up as I approached, her eyes taking in the concealer that didn't quite hide the bruising on my nose. "Hazel," she said simply, "I'm so sorry." Those 3 words broke something in me. No one had ever apologized for what my parents did. No one had ever acknowledged that it was wrong, that I deserved better. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "What happened last night was assault," Sophia continued quietly. "It was abusive and criminal, and from your reaction, I suspect it wasn't the first time. They're not always like that," I found myself saying, the reflexive defense of my abusers coming automatically. "I provoked him." I spoke out of turn. Sophia reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Hazel, listen to me. Nothing you could have said or done would justify what your father did. Nothing. No parent should ever treat their child that way, no matter how old that child is." "But they're my parents," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "Yes, they are. And that makes their behavior worse, not better. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not harm them. She squeezed my hand. You deserve better, Hazel. And I think part of you knows that, or you wouldn't be here talking to me now. That conversation with Sophia was the first crack in the foundation of lies I had built my life upon. The lie that my parents' treatment was normal, the lie that I somehow deserved their cruelty, the lie that I could never escape. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that the problem was not me. It never had been. The day after meeting with Sophia, I called in sick to work. It was the first time I had ever done so, and my father's angry voicemail suggested he knew it was an act of rebellion rather than illness. But I needed space to think, to plan, to breathe. Sophia had given me the business card of her therapist, Dr. Eleanor Lambert. After hours of hesitation, I finally made the call. Dr. Lambert was able to see me that same day. Her office was warm and inviting, nothing like the cold, clinical space I had imagined. She listened without judgment as I haltingly described my childhood, my relationship with my parents, and finally the dinner incident. When I finished, she didn't immediately offer advice or analysis. Instead, she asked one simple question: "What do you want your life to look like, Hazel?" No one had ever asked me that before. My desires, my dreams, my wants had never been considered relevant. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never been allowed to want anything for myself." "Then that's where we begin," she said gently, "by giving yourself permission to want things, to need things, to dream of a different life." Over the next few weeks, I began meeting with Dr. Lambert twice weekly. She helped me understand terms like narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation. She explained that my father's behavior matched the profile of a narcissistic personality disorder, and that my mother was what therapists called an enabler or sometimes a co-abuser. Most importantly, she helped me see that none of it was my fault. Children do not cause their parents to abuse them, ever. Meanwhile, Sophia was helping me in more practical ways. She went apartment hunting with me during lunch breaks, focusing on buildings with security and locations my parents wouldn't think to look. She introduced me to her financial advisor, who helped me open bank accounts my father couldn't access. Small steps toward independence that felt simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. "You need to gather all your important documents," Sophia advised one afternoon as we reviewed apartments online. "Birth certificate, social security card, passport, any financial records. Do it gradually so they don't notice." I nodded, adding these items to the growing checklist on my phone. The list was both practical and symbolic, each item representing another thread of control I was preparing to sever. The hardest part was maintaining the facade at work and during family interactions. I had to pretend nothing had changed, that I was still the compliant, submissive daughter I had always been. My father remained coldly professional at the office, though I occasionally caught him watching me with suspicion. My mother called daily with trivial questions that I recognized as surveillance. "What time will you be home tonight? Who were you having lunch with yesterday? Why was your car parked near downtown on Saturday?" The Garcia company had officially withdrawn from business discussions, citing ethical concerns about our corporate culture. Other business partners began keeping their distance as well. Rumors spread despite my father's attempts to control the narrative. In the close-knit business community, word traveled fast about executives who mistreated their staff, especially their own daughters. As my father's business prospects dimmed, his mood at home darkened. The tension during Sunday dinners became unbearable. Every word I spoke was scrutinized, every expression analyzed for signs of disloyalty. My mother intensified her criticism, perhaps sensing my growing detachment. "You've been different lately," she accused one evening. "Is this still about that dinner? For goodness sake, Hazel, learn to take a correction gracefully." A correction? That was how they framed assault, a necessary correction of my behavior. In therapy, I began exploring not just my present circumstances, but my future options. Dr. Lambert helped me see that I had marketable skills that would allow me to find employment elsewhere. "Your experience in digital marketing is valuable," she assured me. "And your father doesn't own your talent or your future." Secretly, I updated my resume and reached out to contacts in the industry, people I had met at conferences who worked at companies far from my father's sphere of influence. To my surprise, several expressed interest. Apparently, my work spoke for itself despite my father's constant belittling. The apartment search finally yielded results, a small but modern one-bedroom in a secure building across town, available immediately. The rent was within my budget, especially once I factored in the savings I had been quietly accumulating. Sophia helped me sign the lease using her address for the paperwork to avoid tipping off my parents. "When will you tell them?" Sophia asked as we celebrated with coffee after signing the lease. "Once everything is in place," I replied. "I can't give them any warning. They'll try to stop me." She nodded, understanding the stakes better than most. "You'll need a safety plan for the actual day. Would you like me to be there?" The offer touched me deeply. Having someone on my side, someone who believed me and supported me, was still a novel experience. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that very much." Over the next 2 weeks, I gradually moved essential items to the new apartment, clothes in small batches that wouldn't be missed, books, personal mementos. Each item transferred felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The final piece of my escape plan fell into place when I received a job offer from a digital marketing firm in the neighboring city. The position came with a significant salary increase and, more importantly, autonomy. I would be building and leading my own team, valued for my expertise rather than tolerated as the boss's daughter. I accepted immediately, negotiating a start date 3 weeks out to allow for my transition. As the pieces of my new life assembled, my father grew increasingly suspicious of my behavior. He began checking my computer at work, questioning colleagues about my conversations, even following me to lunch one day. I maintained the facade as best I could, but it was becoming harder to hide the fundamental change taking place within me. I was awakening to my own worth, my own power, and he sensed it. One evening, he called me into his home office. "There have been some concerning reports about your conduct," he began, his voice deceptively calm. "Meetings outside the office, unusual phone calls. Care to explain?" "Just networking," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Building relationships with industry contacts, like you always taught me to do." He studied me for a long moment. "You're planning something," he said finally. "I can always tell when you're lying, Hazel. Whatever it is, I strongly advise you to reconsider. Family loyalty should always come first." "Of course, Father," I replied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I'd never forget that. As I left his office, I knew my window of opportunity was closing. He was watching me too closely now, the walls closing in. The time for careful planning was over. I needed to act. The final Sunday dinner before my planned departure arrived. I had already moved most of my belongings to the new apartment. My resignation letter was drafted and saved on my personal laptop. Sophia had agreed to pick me up afterward with the last of my things. Everything was in place. My mother had prepared her usual elaborate meal, oblivious to the fact that this would be the last time I would sit at her table. My father was in an unusually good mood, having secured a new client the previous day. My brother Thomas was home from college for the weekend, completing our family tableau. "The Harrisons have finally signed," my father announced as he carved the roast. After the debacle with the Wilsons and Garcias, we needed this win. He glanced at me pointedly. "Fortunately, some clients still recognize quality when they see it." "That's wonderful news, dear," my mother replied, passing the potatoes. "I always said they would come around eventually." The conversation flowed around me as it always had, full of subtle digs and passive-aggressive comments, but tonight they didn't land as they once had. Each bar bounced off the armor I had been building in therapy, with Sophia's help, through my own growing self-awareness. I was no longer the vulnerable girl desperate for their approval. I was a woman ready to claim her freedom. "Hazel, you're quieter than usual tonight," my mother observed halfway through the meal. "Are you feeling all right? You look flushed." "I'm fine," I replied, setting down my fork. "Actually, I have something I'd like to discuss with all of you." My father frowned. "This is hardly the time for whatever drama you've been concocting. We're celebrating a significant business achievement." "This will only take a moment," I continued, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "I wanted to let you know that I'm leaving." There was a moment of confused silence. Leaving what? My mother asked. Everything, I said. The house, the company, this family dynamic. I took a deep breath. I've accepted a position at Morton Digital. I've rented my own apartment. Today is my last day here. The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas stared at me with wide eyes, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. My mother's face drained of color. And my father, his expression shifted from disbelief to fury with frightening speed. This is absurd, he said finally, his voice dangerously low. You're not going anywhere. You have responsibilities to this family and this company. My responsibility is to myself now, I replied, surprised by the calm in my voice. For 32 years, I've tried to earn your love and approval. I now understand that was never possible, not because of any failing on my part, but because of fundamental flaws in how you view relationships, parenthood, and basic human dignity. My mother gasped. How dare you speak to your father that way after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, mother? I asked quietly. Protected me, supported me, loved me unconditionally, or have you enabled his abuse while adding your own unique brand of cruelty? Abuse, my father practically spat the word. Is that what your therapist is calling discipline and high standards now? This victimhood mentality is pathetic. Hazel, I felt a chill run through me. How do you know I've been seeing a therapist? His smile was cold. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I know everything that happens in my house, in my company. Phone records, credit card statements. Did Dr. Lambert help you craft this little declaration of independence? The revelation that he had been monitoring me so closely should have frightened me. Instead, it only reinforced my decision. Yes, therapy has helped me recognize patterns of narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation. It's helped me understand that what happened at the dinner with the Wilsons and Garcias was not an isolated incident, but part of a lifelong pattern. My father stood abruptly, towering over the table. You ungrateful little. He stopped himself, glancing at Thomas, who was watching with a horrified expression. Thomas, go to your room. This conversation is not for you. No, I said firmly. Thomas should hear this. He should know what this family really is. The perfect image we project is a lie. Always has been. My father's face contorted with rage. You don't give orders in my house. That's the point, I replied, rising to my feet as well. This is your house. It's never been a home to me, just a stage for your performance as the successful businessman and father. Well, I'm done playing my role in your production. He moved toward me, fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, and old instincts urged me to cower, to apologize, to retreat. Instead, I stood my ground, looking directly into his eyes. Go ahead, I said quietly. Show Thomas exactly who you are. Show him what happens when someone in this family speaks truth. He froze, caught between his rage and his need to maintain the facade, especially in front of Thomas. The mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the emptiness behind his eyes, the hollowness at his core. My mother attempted to salvage the situation, as she always did. Hazel, you're clearly overwhelmed and not thinking clearly. Let's discuss this tomorrow when everyone is calmer. There's nothing to discuss, I replied, turning to face her. I'm not asking permission or seeking your approval. I'm informing you of my decision. If you walk out that door, my father said, his voice deadly calm, don't expect to ever come back. You'll be cut off completely. No money, no job, no family. Is that what you want? What I want, I said carefully, is what every child deserves, love that doesn't have to be earned, respect for my autonomy and dignity, parents who protect rather than harm. Since I can't have those things with you, yes, I'm prepared to walk away. My mother began to cry, but I recognized the performance for what it was. These were not tears of sadness for losing me, but tears of frustration that her control was slipping. After everything we've sacrificed for you, she sobbed. How can you be so cruel? I learned cruelty from experts, I replied without emotion. But I'm choosing not to continue that legacy. Thomas spoke for the first time, his voice small and confused. Hazel, is it really that bad? They're strict, but… Thomas, I said gently, you've had a different experience in this family than I have, and I'm glad for that. But yes, it's been that bad. The night Dad smashed my face into my dinner plate in front of business associates was just one incident among many. The constant criticism, the control, the emotional manipulation, it's abuse, and I can't live with it anymore. Their faces went pale when I refused to back down, when they realized they had no more power over me. The shock in their expressions confirmed what I had begun to suspect. They had never seen me as a full person with rights and dignity. I had always been an extension of themselves, a possession to be controlled. My independence was inconceivable to them. "I have a car waiting," I said, picking up my purse. "The rest of my things have already been moved. I've left my letter of resignation on your desk, Father. My work has been properly transitioned to the team." "You'll regret this," my father threatened, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "When you fail out there on your own, don't come crawling back." "The only thing I regret," I said as I walked toward the door, "is not doing this years ago." I left without looking back, walking out into the warm evening air with a strange mixture of terror and elation flooding through me. Sophia was waiting in her car at the curb, exactly as promised. As I slid into the passenger seat, she squeezed my hand. "You did it," she said simply. "I did," I replied, my voice breaking slightly as the reality of what I had just done hit me. "I really did." As we drove away from the house that had been my prison for so long, I felt something I had never experienced before: the lightness of freedom, the unburdening of a lifetime of unnecessary shame and guilt. I was terrified of what lay ahead, but for the first time in my life, the future was mine to shape. The first weeks in my new apartment were a strange mixture of exhilaration and panic. Simple decisions overwhelmed me. What color towels did I want? What time should I go to bed? What should I eat for dinner? Without my parents dictating every aspect of my life, I felt simultaneously liberated and adrift. Dr. Lambert assured me this was a normal part of the adjustment process after leaving an abusive environment. "You're developing your own internal authority," she explained during one session. "After a lifetime of external control, that takes time and practice. Be patient with yourself." My new job at Morton Digital began 3 weeks after I left my parents' home. On my first day, my new boss, Laura, gave me a tour of the office and introduced me to the team I would be leading. "We're excited to have you," she said warmly. "Your portfolio is impressive, and your ideas for our digital strategy alignment are exactly what we've been looking for." The contrast between this environment and my father's company was stark. Here, my opinions were solicited and valued. My expertise was respected. When I made suggestions in meetings, people took notes rather than dismissed me. It was disorienting but wonderful. My father, predictably, did not accept my departure gracefully. True to his controlling nature, he attempted to sabotage my new position, calling Laura to warn her about my emotional instability and unprofessional conduct. Fortunately, Laura saw through his tactics immediately. "Your father called yesterday," she mentioned casually during our weekly check-in. "He seemed very concerned about your mental health." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "Nothing," I believed, she replied firmly. "I judge people by their work and their character, Hazel. So far, you've impressed me on both counts. Whatever personal issues exist between you and your family are your business, not mine." Her response brought tears to my eyes. This was how normal, healthy, professional relationships worked. This was how decent people treated each other. My mother alternated between angry messages and tearful pleas for reconciliation. "Your father is just concerned about you," one text read. "We only want what's best for you. Family should stay together." Another, sent just hours later: "Your selfishness is breaking this family apart. Your brother is devastated by your abandonment." I showed these messages to Dr. Lambert, who helped me see them for what they were: manipulation tactics designed to trigger my guilt and sense of obligation. Together, we crafted boundaries for communication. I would not respond to emotional blackmail. I would engage only with respectful messages, and I would take as much space as I needed to heal. About a month after I left, my Aunt Elizabeth reached out. She was my mother's sister, someone who had occasionally shown me kindness, but never intervened during the worst of my parents' behavior. "I heard what happened," she said when I cautiously answered her call. "I want you to know I believe you, Hazel, and I'm sorry I never did anything to help you." Her acknowledgement was healing in a way I hadn't anticipated. Why did no one ever say anything? I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. Everyone saw how they treated me. Why did no one help? Fear, she admitted quietly. Your father has always been intimidating. And I think we all convinced ourselves it wasn't that bad, that all families have their issues. It was easier than facing the truth and having to act on it. She paused. That's not an excuse, just an explanation. I failed you, and I'm deeply sorry for that. Her apology couldn't erase the past, but it helped me understand the complex dynamics that had allowed my abuse to continue unchallenged for so long. It also gave me hope that perhaps not everyone in my extended family would choose my parents over me. Thomas was the biggest surprise. 6 weeks after I left, he texted, asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, choosing a public location where I would feel safe. When he arrived, he looked different somehow, smaller, less confident than the golden child I had grown up with. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, he began awkwardly. About having a different experience in our family than you did. And I've been watching Mom and Dad more closely since you left. What have you seen? I asked. He stared into his coffee. They talk about you differently than they talk about me. Always have, I guess, but I never really noticed before. And Dad, he gets this look sometimes when he's angry, like he's barely holding himself back. He looked up at me. Did he ever hit you, Hazel? The question broke my heart, not just for myself, but for Thomas. He was beginning to question everything he thought he knew about our family. Not often, I answered honestly. He preferred emotional abuse, more control, less evidence. But yes, sometimes it got physical. Thomas nodded, as if confirming something he had suspected. I believe you, he said simply. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Those 3 words, I believe you, became a lifeline in my healing journey, from Sophia, from Dr. Lambert, from Aunt Elizabeth, from Thomas, and eventually from new friends I made as I rebuilt my life. Being believed after a lifetime of gaslighting was profoundly validating. My father's business began to suffer as rumors about his behavior spread through the industry. The incident with the Wilsons and Garcias had not stayed private, as he had demanded. Several key employees left the company, including Sophia, who accepted a director position at a competitor. Clients began taking their business elsewhere, citing concerns about the company culture. It was a small measure of justice, though I took no pleasure in it. About 6 months after I left, I encountered my father at an industry conference. I had known he would be there but had decided to attend anyway. I refused to allow his presence to limit my professional growth. We came face to face in the networking area during a coffee break. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to react. Then he stepped toward me, hand extended as if nothing had happened. Hazel, he said smoothly, his public persona firmly in place. You're looking well. Perhaps we could catch up over dinner, discuss your return to the family business. I didn't take his hand. No, thank you, I replied calmly. I'm happy in my current position. His smile tightened. This rebellion has gone on long enough, he said, lowering his voice. You've made your point. It's time to come home. This isn't a rebellion, I said, aware of curious onlookers. This is my life now, and I'm not coming back. He leaned closer, dropping all pretense of civility. You think you can succeed without me? Everything you are, everything you know, came from me. You're nothing on your own. A year earlier, those words would have devastated me. Now, they merely confirmed that I had made the right decision. I'm sorry you feel that way, I replied. I wish you well, but I need to maintain my boundaries. Please don't contact me again unless you're ready to acknowledge the harm you've caused and make genuine amends. I walked away then, leaving him speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. The encounter left me shaky but proud. I had faced my abuser and maintained my boundaries. It was a victory, small but significant. As the 1-year anniversary of my escape approached, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no accusations or guilt trips. Instead, for the first time, she acknowledged that perhaps there had been problems in our family dynamic. I've been seeing a therapist, she wrote. It was Thomas's idea. She's been helping me understand some things about myself and my choices. I'm not ready to accept everything you've claimed about our family. But I'm beginning to see that I may have failed you as a mother in important ways. If you'd be willing, I'd like to meet someday to talk on your terms and your time. It was not a full acknowledgement of the abuse, not a complete apology. But it was a tiny opening, a small crack in the denial that had defined our relationship. I showed the letter to Dr. Lambert. "This is your decision," she said. "There's no right or wrong answer. What do you feel ready for, if anything?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm not ready to meet yet," I decided. "But I think I'll write back. Set clear boundaries. Maybe someday, with enough therapy on both sides, some kind of limited relationship might be possible." "That sounds like a healthy approach," Dr. Lambert nodded. "Remember, reconciliation is not required for your healing. It's an option, not an obligation." That perspective was liberating. For so long, I had been bound by obligation, by the idea that family relationships must be maintained at all costs, even at the expense of my well-being. Now, I understood that I had choices. I could set conditions for relationships. I could require respect and safety. I could walk away from people who harmed me, even if they were family, especially if they were family. As I continue building my new life, I'm learning what healthy relationships look like. Sophia remains a dear friend and mentor. My team at work respects and values me. I've begun dating again, cautiously, with a much clearer understanding of red flags and boundaries. I've found a community through a support group for adult survivors of family abuse. Most importantly, I'm learning to trust myself, to recognize my own worth independent of others' validation, to hear my own voice amid the lingering echoes of my parents' criticism. Some days are harder than others. The programming of a lifetime doesn't disappear overnight, but each day I grow stronger, more confident in my right to exist on my own terms. My value was never determined by how they saw me at their table, but by how I finally learned to see myself, free from their definitions, their limitations, their cruelty, worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of peace. If you're watching this and recognize your own family in mine, please know you're not alone. The journey to freedom is difficult but possible. The first step is believing you deserve better, because you do. We all do. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear that escape is possible. And I'd love to hear in the comments about your own journey toward freedom from toxic relationships. What was your turning point? What helped you find the courage to leave? Your story matters too.